Hey, what's going on? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Melanated Artists in Performance. Tonight, I got to speak with Lionel Harrell, who is the instrumental music supervisor for Prince George's County in Maryland. We discuss his interest and love for music, why he became a band director, which then led to becoming the instrumental music supervisor, why he loves to perform, who he has performed for, and what he enjoys doing on his downtime. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Melanated Artists in Performance. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dynamically Melanated Gifted Artists. Tonight, I will be speaking with Lionel Harrell, who is the instrumental music supervisor for Prince George's County in Prince George's County, Maryland. And this will be a discussion of how he became a music teacher and transitioned to a music supervisor. And this is going to be a fun interview, and I can't wait. And let's get started. So, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Titus. Appreciate this.
I think this is my third episode, so I really appreciate you taking the time because I know that you are an extremely, a little bit busy kind of guy. So appreciate it.
Sometimes.
Well, I want you to just talk with the audience and just tell us, how you became a music teacher, and then basically transitioning to music supervisor. But yeah, please share your background.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about how I got my start in music first. I remember I was about 4 years old. My dad was playing trombone in the basement. My dad played trombone in junior high school and high school. And he had just picked it up one day just to try to see if he could still play it. And I was down in the basement, playing around or whatever with my toys, and heard him play. And I was like, "Ooh, what's that?" And I asked him, "Can I come over and try to play it?" So he gave me the mouthpiece, showed me how to make a sound, whatever. Gave me the trombone, and I just did a little thing, whatever, just buzz into the mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I was pretty much hooked, because that was the first instrument that I was like exposed to, like in real life, like hands-on type thing. So when it came time to pick an instrument in school, like in fourth grade, that's what I picked trombone, because that's what I knew. My dad played it. Hey, I'll try it too.
Right.
So yeah. So we went, rented an instrument, took it to school. You started, playing for a little bit, liked it. But then I realized what I liked more than trombone, or at least the sound anyway, was French horn. And
Okay.
so I really started like listening more to horn, and like, I want to play that. And so I remember going to my elementary band teacher, Mr. Prather, and I was like, "Hey, Mr. Prather, I want to play French horn. Can I switch to French horn?" And he said, "Well, why don't you stick with trombone first, since you just got that, you're kind of learning trombone, and because I was tall, I could reach sixth position pretty much as a fourth grader."
Okay.
So I was like, "All right." So that's how I got my start on trombone, and I've been playing ever since. But as far as getting more into my career as a teacher, my mother was a teacher, and she taught elementary school. And so I remember, like, even as a kid when I was in school, helping her. I would go to her school, before school started, and help her do her bulletin boards. And I remember grading papers for her, just doing little things on the side that she would just hand me and have me do. So I was engrossed and involved in school, at least on a, from a teacher aspect, I guess, at an early age, not even knowing, and not really liking it. It was just something I did because my mother said, "Hey, here, do this."
Right.
That's what I did. But I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was just, it's something she had me do. But doing that year after year, it was just something that kind of, I expected. So every year when school started, I just knew I was going to go to my mom's school and help her do all these things to get her room ready before school started. So when it came time, I was still playing in elementary school as far as an instrument. Got to middle school. In middle school, that's when I started thinking about what I want to be when I grow up, what I want to do. And I enjoyed playing. I was decent at it. Um, I just knew something in music. I didn't know what in middle school. I was like, I'm gonna do something in music. That's what I kind of, nailed down. I was like, all right, I got to
Hmm.
figure out. I want to be a musician. I want to play, but I didn't know exactly what. So
Okay.
um, then I met my middle school band director, uh, Ernest Robinson. That man right there. Uh, After meeting him and being in his class, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be like him.
Okay.
He was the one that kind of just turned the light on for me in the sense of considering being a band teacher. He seemed like
Okay.
he had fun with what he was doing. He even did other things outside of the music world that I enjoyed. Like he ran the TV studio, and I was a tech geek, so I loved, anything that had a technology background in it. So I was on the TV club. I was the technical director, and so I would be switching all the cameras and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so it was cool to see, like in his world, these are the things he got to do. So I was like, oh, so I want to do those things too. So I just kind of followed that path. And then when I got into high school, I had a couple different band directors in high school. By my junior year, I had Eric Summers, and he really turned our band program around and just made it even more. I was enjoying band all this time up until this point, but when
Hmm.
he got there, it was like wow, like I didn't even know we could do the things that we were doing, or
Okay.
that he had us do. And so that was when I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So
Okay.
went
Wow.
to
Okay. Cool.
major when it was time to pick a major in college. That's what I did,
Hmm.
pick music education. Well, I'll say this: I wanted to do music performance,
Yeah, I was just
but
going
I
to
had a
ask.
couple people.
I was just going to ask if music education was your first, or if you wanted to do performance first.
So I really like to play. Again, at this point, in my life, I was doing the typical, concert band, jazz band, marching band. We had a brass quintet, did that as well.
Hmm.
And so I enjoyed all of that. I loved playing all of that. And so that's, I was like, oh, I want to do that. And
Okay.
so when it was time to pick a major, I was like, I want to do music performance. But then I had some people come and talk to me and say, hey, you know, you should consider music education because if you are going out for music performance, it's tough. It's hard to make it in the sense of it being a job and you being able to live off of that.
Right.
So they said if you consider music education, you can still play, but
Hmm.
you have that teaching job, to kind of fall back on, and you can play on the side. And so I did that. Listened to people around me, kind of give me that advice, and that's how I got into music education.
Were you more interested classically, jazz, or it just didn't matter? You just enjoyed playing.
I've always enjoyed playing anything, whatever type of music, whatever genre of music. But I am more classically trained than anything. Um,
Okay.
even before I had my first private instructor, I was always that type of person where I wanted to challenge myself in playing. So I remember, high school music for a trombone player is not necessarily the most challenging music,
Right.
that you get. So I would, play bassoon parts, or I would pick up cello parts to try to challenge myself, to play something a little bit more technical. I even started
Okay.
playing percussion where, because I love like reading rhythms. So every chance I could get, I would sneak away from the trombone and I would, pick up a snare drum and just play different rhythms because I like playing, I wanted to challenge myself and play things more difficult.
Okay. You were one of those. I was not one of those. Was I was happy with the clarinet music, and then um when my high school director had or high school clarinet teacher was talking about like transposition. I'm like, what? What is
Hmm.
that? Because I had no idea. I just thought a clarinet was a clarinet, and I didn't know that there were clarinets that came in different keys, and then the music was in a different key, and you had to do all this transposition. And I'm just like, I just want to play the clarinet. I don't want to have to think while I'm playing. So,
Yeah, I
well, that's
got to a
good.
point, even in middle school, where again, like, going back to like the whole French horn thing, I wanted to explore different instruments. So I remember, I don't know if many people don't know this, Mr. Robinson probably didn't know this, uh, but I broke my instrument on purpose because I
Oh,
wanted to play something else.
wow.
So, um, so while my instrument was in a shop, I was in the percussion section. I learned, more about playing in percussion. I picked up euphonium because, being a trombone player was like, all right,
Hmm.
it's pretty simple, pretty similar. So I
Right.
learned how to play euphonium. Um, so yeah, I was, again, this is still when I didn't really know what I wanted to be, but it's funny thinking about it now. It's like that exposure that I had as far as, trying to dabble in different instruments kind of explains why I guess I chose the path that I did.
So, okay, first, before I go on to college years, did your parents know that you broke your instrument on purpose?
Nope, probably not. No, I mean, I I I remember two
And
times.
what did you do?
Uh,
What did you do to your instrument to like? What did you do to break it?
so I remember twice that my instrument broke, like two significant times where it broke. One time was on accident. I think the accident is what kind of gave me the idea of, oh wow, if there's no other trombone for me to play, I got to do something. They got to give me something else to do. So for the first time, we were in line in the hallway getting ready to do a concert. It was like a winter concert or something. And being a trombonist and brass player, I was taking my slide and I was trying to hit the ceiling tile with my slide.
Oh
and,
god.
and my spit valve got caught and it broke off.
Oh,
So right before the
oh, that's
concert, so at
hilarious.
that time there was another trombone. So I was given another trombone and I played another trombone for the concert. But I don't know if it belonged to somebody else or whatever, but I remember like, I didn't have access to that instrument. So, they had to wait till I get my instrument back from the shop. So I was like, oh, so the second time is like, hey, if that happens, I get to do something else. And I don't remember how I broke it the second time, but
Um,
yeah, that's what.
you brass players always doing something, getting into something. um,
Yeah.
so as you are, basically transitioning through high school and now going into college, what was your musical career like, or your experience like in college? And I guess so. Did you know you wanted to be a music teacher in high school, or was it more of a journey through college and it, really solidifying what you really wanted to do?
So again, like in middle school, I knew I wanted to do something in music. High school, I think when it was time to choose, like, start looking at, colleges and things like that and applying, I think that's when I kind of made my decision about being a music teacher. Um,
Okay.
I always had different things I wanted to do, like outside of music. Like I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So that was like something, I wanted to seriously consider. Um, I don't know. I mean, I liked things about the military because my dad worked at Arlington Cemetery, and so I was, being around, uh, being there a lot, for funerals, for full honor funerals, and seeing, you know, all the different branches of services and things like that. And I got a chance to kind of go to Fort Myer and hang around the Army band there a few times, and so it's like,
Okay.
oh, okay. So I think it was more by the time it was time to pick college, go to a college. I still wanted to be a performance major, but I
Okay.
wanted to play. But I knew, all right, in order to do that and listening to, like again, people who were telling me the best way to do it is to do music education. So um, I think that's what I just did. I just said, hey, all right, I'll learn how to be a music educator, but I still was still focused on really wanting to play.
Okay. So where did you go to college and who did you study with?
Went to Bowie State University, BSU. Um, and so uh, this was the time in, I think it was my ninth grade year. I'm not ninth grade year, sorry. My freshman year, freshman or sophomore year is when I first had a private teacher. I didn't have a private teacher until then.
Okay.
I like to say, and people have told me, I was gifted to a certain degree as far as being able to play trombone. I was pretty good at playing trombone.
Hmm.
Um, so I remember in high school honor band and things like that, making it into that every year, talking to other people in the section, everybody would say who they studied with or whatever. And they were like, who you studied with? And I was like, nobody. Like, what are you talking about? Study.
Right. Right.
But um, not to say it like I was that great. It was just
Right.
I had
Yeah.
some talent.
Right.
But when I got my first trombone teacher, that is when I learned how much I didn't know about
Mm,
trombone, or I
okay.
learned like there's more to just having raw talent. Like now it's time to learn, the skill of playing
Hmm.
trombone. There's
Hmm.
there's another side to it, and it was a little hard for me. It was kind of frustrating in the sense because I felt like I was learning it all over again.
Okay.
And so it took some patience to really appreciate, you know, what what I was getting. And I was taking lessons from George Allen, and he at the time played in the Army band. It was I think the things that have happened in my life, it's funny sometimes how like small the world is and how the connections are. So
Hmm.
George Allen actually knew my dad before I knew who George Allen was,
Okay.
because he played in funerals at Arlington Cemetery with the Army band.
Okay.
And so once he found out who I was, like I was my dad's son, it
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, I know your dad." And I was like, "Oh, what?" And so he really kind of took me under his wing, and he worked me. He worked me like
Okay.
in private lessons and learning how to play the trombone. And I am so appreciative of that from him, because I became a better player because of that. And all this time, like you asked earlier, like what was my focus as far as the type of music? It was classical. And so with him being as great of a player as he was, and listening to him play, I was like, oh, okay. Now I was really starting to get focused again with wanting to be a performer. How do I be as good as he is? And so
Hmm.
that frustration I had in the beginning of learning how to play all over again, in a sense, it was like, all right, what do I need to do so I can sound like you?
Right.
And so,
Right.
I got that experience through him.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That's great. Um, so now you are done with college and now you're teaching. And so what what is that like? Like how are you enjoying that? Um, yeah, just talk about your early years of just teaching.
Okay. So I'll talk about how, I mean, growing up in Prince George's County Public Schools, being a student in that school system, that's all I knew. And so when it was
Hmm.
time to apply for a job, that's all I applied for, because I wanted, like, I had so much fun being a student, not just a music student, but just being a student, period. Like, I
Hmm.
had the greatest friends. I had formed the best relationships with a whole bunch of people, diverse group of people. Um, Loved almost every teacher that I had. Um,
Okay.
so it was great. So I just like I knew, like, all right, I want to be, if I'm going to teach, this is where I want to teach.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it was the smartest thing to do or not, but that was the only place I applied to, was Prince George's
Okay.
County Public Schools, and
Okay.
that's where I met Kathy Rotifer. And I remember interviewing with her, and again, I I had the degree to be a teacher, but I wasn't necessarily, you know, like that hot shot, like, oh, this is the teacher we want to have. Like, all right, they were like, all right, she talked to me, learned a little bit more about me or whatever. And she
Hmm.
said, all right, this is what you need to do. It's like, I'm going to give you some things to work on so we can make sure that you're going to be, the best teacher that you can be. It's like, all right.
Okay.
So I listened to her. She hired me. Um, she took a chance on me, basically. That's what she did. She took a chance on me. And I'm glad she did, because I don't know where I would have been had that not happened. But yeah, I
Right.
started teaching elementary for my first 5 years. I had five. I taught in five elementary schools. I was an itinerant teacher, so I had five schools for the first 4 years of teaching. And so that taught me how to be organized and stay on top of things, because when you're teaching at that many schools and you're traveling back and forth to, two schools a day, you had to be on top of your stuff. You had to know what you're going to do. You didn't
Yep.
have a lot of time to kind of play around and figure things out, because like once I
Right.
got to my next school, like my kids were coming and I had to be ready to go. I had to know what they were doing. So
Right.
that was a great experience for me. It was tough, it was hard,
Hmm.
because it was a lot to kind of manage, but it
Hmm.
made me really become an organized person, in the sense of having a game plan, always having a game plan of what's going to happen next.
Okay.
um
So how many years have you taught? Like just yeah. How many
so I
years have
ended
you?
up teaching for 13 years. I taught
Okay.
in the classroom for 13 years. uh Loved almost every minute of it. Yep. I mean, so
Almost.
comparing it to what I do now, almost, yep. There were some moments in there, mainly in middle school. But
Okay. Yep.
um,
And how many years did you teach middle school?
as you may know,
Yeah, I know a little bit about that. How many years did you teach in middle school?
I taught middle school. For just middle school, it was 1 year, but I taught K-8 too. So I had middle
Okay.
school students. So it was a total of, geez, five, let's see, like 9 years,
Ooh,
8 years, eight
okay.
years of middle school.
Okay. Did you have a preference? Did you like one over the other of those almost moments?
So I had the opportunity to teach on every level. I remember I applied for a high school position and got it, but turned it down,
Hmm.
um, because I enjoyed where I was, and as far as like I was comparing it to where I was, and at the time, um, I was teaching at a K-8, and
Okay.
so I enjoyed the K-8 because it's like, all right, I taught elementary for so long. It's like that was what I was like most comfortable with in the beginning of my teaching career. So, but my issue with elementary was, as soon as my kids got really good, that's when they left. So that's when I
Yeah.
was like, all right, I'm going to explore secondary, because it's like, all right, I love starting them, but I want to do like more with them. And
Right.
so when I got into this K-8 position, that was like the perfect position for me, because it was like I started my own kids
Yep.
and then I got to keep them longer
Yep.
than what most elementary teachers did. And so like I didn't want to leave that. So
Right.
when I, had the opportunity to go to high school, because I wanted to teach high school, because I loved marching band and I loved concert band, I loved jazz band, I wanted to do all those things. I was just like, well, I'll just do that in my K-8. And so I kind of just kind of in my frame of mind, the way I taught was kind of like a mini high school. So we did marching band, even though that's not something that, was taught in elementary school or
Hmm.
middle school. We did it for like 2 weeks, because at our school we had a Halloween parade. So that was a perfect
Hmm.
opportunity. I talked to the principal, I said, hey, would you mind if I did like a little marching band, and we could be a part of this parade, or maybe even lead the parade? And she was like, or he at the time, he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I
Okay.
taught the kids how to march. At this time, I was still playing. I mean, I played in marching band in high school and in college, but I
Hmm.
was also playing in what was the Washington Redskins marching band at the time too. So it was another love that I had. And so it was something that I could pass on to the kids that I was teaching. And so I taught them how to, march really quick, taught them memorize 2 songs that I arranged, and they
Okay.
learned it, they memorized it, and we went out and we did a parade. So that was the marching band aspect.
Okay. Well, that's good. Better you than me. Glad you had that experience. um, so I heard that you mentioned that you were a part of the Redskin band. So how did you find time to do stuff outside of school? Now, this is before you're in the position that you're in now, but how did you get that gig, and how long have you done it? Are you still doing it?
So I got the gig. I started. When did I start in the Washington Redskins marching band? I think it was like 1999
Oof.
uh,
All right.
or
Back in the
2000.
1900s.
Yeah, whole different century.
All right.
um, it's what's funny is uh, when I was in college, I actually subbed in the at the time they were Washington Redskins. Washington Redskins had a marching band and a pro band, which was jazz band.
Oh,
So
okay.
and I actually subbed in the jazz band because in college one of the trombonists that I worked and studied under for jazz, Wandell Brown, played in the Washington pro band, and he couldn't make a gig, and so they asked if I could come in and sit in for him. And so I
Hmm.
think that was my first experience being at a game. Besides in high school, we did a halftime show at RFK.
Okay.
I went to Northwestern High School, and we did a halftime show at RFK, and that was crazy. Like I loved every moment of that. It was
Okay.
nerve-wracking being in front of so many people and performing and playing, but
Hmm.
it was also the most exciting thing I had done up until that moment. And so when and I saw the Redskins marching band then, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. What's gonna learn more about that. But I
Right.
actually didn't join it as soon as I could have. I waited 2 years before I actually joined the band because my high school band director ended up being the band director for the Washington Redskins marching band, Eric Summers.
Okay.
So I remember him saying, "Hey, you need to come out and audition for the band or whatever." So I finally did it. I think, like I said, it was 99 or 2000. Came out to audition. Um, the funny thing about it was they didn't have any trombone spots open when I auditioned, but at the
Okay.
same time, they didn't want to lose me either. So I was
Hmm.
a reserve, and so a reserve was a person that just I marched whatever spot whenever someone couldn't make a game or whatever. I marched their spot, and so
Okay.
um, I still play trombone, but everybody had like their own designated spot unless you were a
Hmm.
reserve, and so I just had to fill in. And so it was cool. I enjoyed that because it was kind of fun because it's like you never knew where you're going to end up, and you had to kind of learn what that spot was pretty quickly. So I
Okay.
did that. Ended up being in the band for 21 years. I'm not in it right now.
Wow.
When they changed to the Commanders, um, they went through a whole reorg. Didn't kind of like what how that happened. But enjoyed my time when it was the Redskin band and did it for 21 years. Um, Ended up being section leader for the last couple of years, um, and loved it because I love football. I love the Redskins and now the Commanders, even though they're
Hmm.
not that great of a team as far as having that winning history,
Right.
consistently.
Right.
But I love football, so
Right.
I got to put two passions together. Football
Right.
and playing, and I love what I love most about marching band is the arrangements. I love playing marching band arrangements, and I love
Okay.
competing against other other bands. And so, even though we didn't have that in the NFL, I mean, there's the Ravens band. We didn't compete against them. It was just the fact that I could continue doing what I did in high school and in college. So, met my wife in the band, um,
Okay.
and yeah. So I'm waiting for Uh, now that the Commanders have a new owner and things are going to change, I'm waiting to get back. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll go back.
Okay. Is it is it common for or like are there other teams that have bands, like pro teams that have marching bands?
No, in the NFL, it was only what's now the Commanders and the Ravens, and they're what's funny, and they're both in this area, here in
Wow.
Maryland.
Okay.
Um, Other football teams have other things. They have drum lines and
Okay.
other things have happened since. But um, for the longest time, it was the Colts band before, the Ravens were the Ravens. They were Colts. So it was the Washington Redskins and the Colts. And they were the only two full marching bands, and I still believe that's true.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I hadn't heard of that until actually when I moved out here, and when people were talking about playing for a band, I'm thinking I'm not into sports like that, but I thought I've never remembered anyone talking about a band. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool, especially for both bands to be in this area on the East Coast. So
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about your teaching and now your transition to a music supervisor, and how did that come about? Why did that come about? Um, Happenstance, talk about that.
So um at some point, when you're a teacher, you have to, when you're certified, you have to continue your certification. And so basically, at some point, you had to get your master's to continue teaching. And so it was time for me to decide what I was going to get my master's in. I chose administration supervision. And not that I wanted to be an administrator, it was just, hey, I thought it was something that if I left teaching,
Hmm.
that there were qualities about it that I could use in another field.
Okay.
Um, and if somewhere down the line, maybe, in education, if I decided, to do something else, it was something good to have. So that's what I did. I chose administration supervision as my master's. And so with that, you have to you have to shadow um, an administrator. And so I shadowed my principal at my K-8 where I was, but I
Okay.
also asked to shadow the music supervisor because at the time, before my school turned into a K-8, it was strictly elementary. And so
Okay.
it didn't make sense. The supervisor didn't want me to have to be in a school for just a year, knowing that the following year I would be pulled from that school and be teaching just at my K-8, because when you add those extra grades, I would have been there full time.
Okay.
So she decided she was able to work it out where I could come and intern, with her. Um, and so the timing was just perfect in the sense where um, when I was getting my master's, I had already started kind of like an internship, unofficial internship with her. And
Hmm.
so it just made sense. And so I enjoyed what I was doing with her. And so I asked, now that I'm officially, getting my second degree in administration, can I, do my internship with her as well? And so they allowed me to do it with both my school-based principal and, central office-based administrator. And
Hmm.
so that was great. And so um, there was a point in time where I was half-time teaching and half-time in the office working under Kathy Rutherford, the music supervisor.
Hmm.
So it came to a point where she had said, she was going to retire, and she had said that for a couple of years. And so we were like, yeah, we've heard that before. You're going to retire.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
happening. Like, and we didn't want her to. Like, she was great. Like, we just thought she was going to be there forever. And she would
Right.
say it every
Right.
year. It's like, I'm going to retire soon. We're like, okay, whatever. And then one day it happened. She
Right.
told me, she's like, put my papers in, I'm retiring. I was like, what?
Mm.
So it was a shock. And so that was probably one of the hardest decisions in my life, as far as deciding what to do. And what I mean
Okay.
by that is, I was at this time I had stopped, I'd gotten my master's. I wasn't shadowing her anymore. I was teaching, but I still was, helping when I could. And so when she retired, it was like, okay, well, I at the time had spent so much time working under her and with her. I knew a lot about the behind the scenes things that, were happening in music education in our school system. And so I had to decide, well, is this something you want to do? Like, as far as want to be the music supervisor? And it was tough for me because I enjoyed teaching so much. And I was
Hmm.
afraid what would happen if I left the classroom.
Okay.
Because I mean, while I had a taste of like that administrative world, I still didn't know, everything that, what that meant. And, I wasn't really ready to leave the classroom and leave the kids. I enjoyed teaching so much. The kids were it wasn't a job for me. When I was
Okay.
teaching, I loved coming
Okay.
to work because it wasn't work. It was fun. Like
Mm.
it's one of those things where I've learned now it's like you enjoy what you do because it
Right.
makes so much of a difference.
Right.
And I did. Like I had so much fun being around kids and just dealing with their personalities and teaching band and orchestra and all these different things that, came with that. And so
Hmm.
now when it's time to change that to something else, I was just like, oh, I don't know. So it took me a long time to really decide to say, just to even apply. But the
Okay.
reason why I did was I said, okay, so I got to a point where I said, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll apply. And if I get it, I'll just be the person in place until they hire the real person that's going to
Right.
take over.
Right. The
And I
substitute.
was because
Yeah.
I knew a lot. I was just like, all right, so I'll just kind of be the interim person to kind of keep us going. And then when they find the new person, I can go back to teaching. And so that was my thought process. So I applied, interviewed, and they offered me the job. And still I was thinking, all right, this is going to be temporary.
You're
And
the
so I
understudy
remember,
until they get the new person.
right, exactly, exactly. And so and I remember I interviewed in like June, like the end of the school year. And they, when I applied and they offered me the job, I said, okay. They said, all right, you start next week. And next week was like it was like the week of July 4th or something like that. So I had like 2 or 3 days off for that holiday. And then I had to start. And I was like, wait, I don't get my summer off?
Right.
They were like,
Right.
no, you're 12 month now. Like, let's go. And
Wow.
so that was a shock. That was not, I was not ready for that.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, I I knew with me and all the colleagues around me, we had all worked so hard to do what we did in our school system that,
Hmm.
in my mind, I didn't want an outsider coming in and tearing that all apart. And so
Hmm.
that was like the main reason why I said, okay, I'll go out for this. I'm going to take one for the team, basically.
Right.
I'm going
Right.
to take one for the team, and we'll keep the team together, and
Okay.
we'll kind of hopefully we'll have an opportunity to kind of help the new person, whoever that ends up being, to learn, how and what we do.
Okay.
And that hasn't happened yet because I'm still in this position going
You're
into
still
what
here. Still
year?
here.
This is year 11, year 11
It's been
as a
11 years
supervisor. So
already.
it's 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't know
crazy.
why it just doesn't seem like that long ago. I
Yep,
mean, to
because this is
me,
my
maybe to you, it feels
24th
like
year.
you've been doing this
Yeah,
forever.
this is
But
my 24th year, and it's been 11 years. And sometimes it feels like it goes by really fast, and sometimes it drags out. But yeah, it's been 11 years as supervisor.
okay. And so you feel, um, do you actually feel that you are the right person for this position? Because some people can work a job and still not feel like they are settled or feel um, satisfied. So you feel like you are that person?
I wouldn't say I'm satisfied because there's so much that I want to do. Like I've learned to appreciate what I have done. Um,
Hmm.
particularly over the last couple of years. Um, but I'm the type of person where I'm never satisfied anyway. If you ask people who know me really well, this is like, no, he's never content with, he always wanted more. He's always trying to figure out how to do something better, or whatever. And so
Hmm.
I'm not satisfied. I'm happy in the sense where, I'm proud of what's happened and what we've accomplished as a
Hmm.
staff and as a team. um am I satisfied? No, not yet, because there's still more things I want to do. um
Okay.
it's just, it's hard sometimes though, because you can't do it all at one time.
Right.
It takes time to do things, and it takes a lot of things to happen in order, for you to accomplish what you want to do. But
Hmm.
I'm not completely satisfied yet. So yeah, there's still more on my plate, still more in my mind, that I want to accomplish before I walk away from it. But I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy um, that I took the job. Um, I still wonder often what would have happened if I, stayed, continue teaching, because
Hmm.
I do miss that. I still miss teaching. I still miss being around the students. Every time I, happen to go into a classroom now, after being away from students for so long, it's just little things that happen. I'm just like, oh man, I missed that. Like and it could be bad things. It could just be like a kid misbehaving or whatever. And just like, I'd rather deal with that than deal with some of the things I have to deal with as a central office administrator sometimes.
Right.
So I definitely, I've always been a person that loved kids anyway. I love being around kids.
Hmm.
And so, not having the ability to do that in the way that I was doing it before, I definitely miss that. But I enjoy what I do. What I tell people now is it's a job. What I'm doing now is a job. There are times where I really enjoy what I do, and there's some times where it's tough and it's hard, and it's like, oh, you got to kind of force yourself to get up and get going. It wasn't the
Right.
same when I was teaching, where everything was fun, for the most part. But no, but I enjoy what I do. I like the fact that, you know, there's a bigger picture to things. And so,
Hmm.
and I can help that. But it's, I've never thought of it as me, like I'm the one who's doing this. I've always thought of it as, how can I help the teachers, you all as the teachers, because I remember what it was like. I try to always put myself in the teacher's shoes to remember what it's like to be the teacher, and
Right.
to, think in that way. Because, you always hear about administrators sometimes who leave teaching and go into administration, and they become different. And, I hope that I haven't. I don't know. I try not to be. I try to always, you know, do things in the sense for teachers. But, you know, however people perceive me, my thing is, and it's my you can call it my mantra or whatever. Everything I do is for the students, because I
Hmm.
remember, what I remember the most is the opportunities that I had as a student here in the school system, in that school system, Prince George's County, and, how much fun I had and what I got out of it. And so that's, everything I do, that's who I think about, is, how does this affect the students?
Um, and I was going to ask you, so when you were, so basically, as you're making that transition from teacher to music supervisor, did you ever feel um, like your colleagues, or what could be listed as your colleagues, are now the people that you supervise and
Mhm.
look out for? And because sometimes when being in a school and when you're in a social setting, or just a more relaxed setting, everybody's like, the teachers can have fun amongst themselves. And then it's like, oh, well, here comes the principal. So now we gotta
Right.
shut down certain conversations, not say certain things. Or, we're just careful as to what we say. Did you ever feel, um, did you ever worry about that just because of, you're going from this position to a different, and maybe the people that you used to work with might look at you different or just treat you
Mhm.
different just because respectfully, you are the supervisor now, and so now things just have to be a little bit different with the respect
Right.
and just that level.
Yeah, that was tough for me. That was one of the things that, I thought a lot about even before and clearly as I got the job because I was friends with so many, teachers, so many colleagues. And,
Hmm.
and now, and you learned, going through, the master's program in administration supervision, it's like, yes, you have to distance yourself, you have to kind of, um, in order to get people to respect you or, just understanding the roles of the different positions and things like that. Not that people didn't respect me before but it was difficult because it meant that you know in some ways relationships had to change whether I wanted them to or not, and I didn't want them to, but I understood though at the same time it's like, okay, if I am going to be a supervisor, I can't be buddy buddy with everybody. Everybody
Right,
has to get the same from me. I have to
right,
treat everybody the same. Um, and so it was difficult in the sense too because like everybody had my cell phone number as a colleague before, and so now when I became supervisor, people would text me or call me like, hey, I'm having this problem directly. I'm just like, all right, but that's not how you go about you know
right.
solving the problem or whatever. Like now there's a process in a protocol or whatever, and I've always been a person that enjoys helping others, and so I wanted to do that, and but I had
Hmm.
to understand there's a certain way to go about doing that. So yeah, that was tough, and I didn't want to be that person like coming down the hallway and say, oh, here comes the principal, here comes
Right,
Lionel, you know.
right, right,
I wanted people to view me as who because I wasn't going to change, and that was the thing that I told myself, no matter what I was going to do, whether I was teacher or supervisor, I'm still me. Like I'm saying this to myself, like I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be different because of my role. I understand that sometimes the way you have to handle things has to be different. But I'm still going to be who I am.
right.
I'm not going to turn into someone different. So it was difficult, kind of navigating still wanting to have you know, these relationships with colleagues, but also understanding, as a supervisor, there's this role you have to play as well too. So that took a while, and that kind of honestly, that kind of it was rough and for a little bit, trying to figure out how where that all lays, how it all plays out. So
Right. Okay. Um, so what have been we'll talk about the positive. So what have been the positive eye-opening moments that you have had, if you could share, like as far as being in the position that you're in?
so I'll tell you one that it happens every once in a while, and it happened this past week when I went into a school. It's when I see people who recognize me, like and people being like mostly students. Um, Again, like when I was teaching, like I could follow my own students,
Hmm.
kind of where they've gone from when I first got them. Even when they left, I'm still kind of following their lives and what they ended up doing and things like that. And that was always cool. But it's when I run into people, students that either I taught from years ago or students that I've, come across or engaged with as a supervisor in different events that we have. And
Hmm.
they's like, "Hey, Mr. Harrell, or I remember you. You like you were the band guy or something like that." And
Right,
so, and
right,
they tell
right.
me about what they're doing, and they tell me about how great of a time they had, or just some moment from their past where whether it was me directly or just something that happened musically in their life that affected them, and most of the time it's been in a positive way. Those are the
Hmm.
moments I love. Just love hearing about what people are doing now, as they grow into adults, young adults, and things like that. And so, and see their smiles. I ran into a student. I didn't even teach this student, but it was somebody that was in the school where
Hmm.
I was teaching, and they are now a they're like some type of peer mentor in the school system.
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, I'm working at the school and I'm doing, this and that. And I was just like, oh, that's great. And just like knowing that these kids are now growing up into
Right.
adults and still hanging around the school system in a sense, and they want to give back like I wanted to, to do the same. And even people are doing other things outside of education, just
Hmm.
hearing, great stories. I had a student from Roosevelt a couple of years ago. He auditioned in our high school honor band, and he wanted to audition on alto sax, and we couldn't take as many alto saxes as we wanted to. We had a large group of great alto sax players. But I
Mm.
said, hey, I know you wanted to get into the band on alto sax, but why don't you have? We needed a bari sax player. I said, why don't you try bari sax? Have you tried that before? He was like, not really. And I was like, you know what? I
Hmm.
said, I think you should give that a shot. Try bari sax. And so he ended up doing it. He ended up making the honor band on bari sax. And I got
Okay.
an email from him not that long ago and this is years after he's graduated. And he thanked me for convincing him to switch to bari sax because he's still playing bari sax and he's off doing great things now on bari sax. And it's like moments like that where it's just like it it shows that being a supervisor or central office administrator, you don't necessarily have that direct contact with students anymore. But when
Hmm.
you hear stories like that or get notes or things like that, it shows like, all right, I'm still affecting them in some
Yep.
way positively. And that's
Yep.
important because, you need that.
That's good. That's always good that you still have that connection, or people are at least connected to you some way somehow. So, um, and so how do you deal with because I'm sure there are plenty. How do you deal with the not so great shining moments of, being a supervisor? Um, and I'll just say I'll just say amongst the teachers.
So what I do for anything that is negative or things that are challenging, well I'll say that things challenges that I might come across is uh I've always relied on humor and comedy. That's something that gets me through uh
Okay.
challenging times. And so I've always been a playful person in the sense, my mother's also, why you gotta play so much? Like, why you have to turn everything into a game? And
Right.
that's just the
Right.
way
Right.
I am. Everything is a game to me in a sense because that's how I get through things that I don't like to do. I've
Hmm.
turned it into something else so I can get through it. And so I try to find the humor in things that are negative. And so like, if and that's kind of how I deal with it. I'll laugh at things. I'll just okay, don't take things personally because, if you know that you're doing the best that you can do with what you have to work with, then hey, that's all that matters. People won't always understand the decisions you have to make or why you do things that you do sometimes. But if,
Hmm.
you are comfortable in knowing based off of that particular situation that you did the best that you could, that's all you can ask for. And so, I and it's not something that came to me right away as a supervisor because you have to learn not to take things personally because a lot of the things that you get are problems. Like that's one of the things I did not like about this job is that everybody comes to you with problems
Right.
because that is a big part of the job. As a
Right.
supervisor, people look to you to help them solve their problems. And so um and it was difficult because I was like, man, everything I'm getting is bad. Like, where's the good stuff? So I would even ask people like, hey, can you just send me tell me something good that's happening in your classroom or in your school building in your life or something because man, it's like it was difficult for me to deal with hearing everybody's problems all the time. And so that's when I
Hmm.
learned it's like, all right, well, that's just the job. That's just a part of it. So don't let that stick to you. Don't let that affect you so much. Just do what you can to help people in their situations, but also know that, you're not going to fix everybody's problems. You're not going to solve everybody's problems.
Hmm.
Um, and that's okay. That's just the way life is, but do the best you can with whatever that you're working on. And if you can do that, hey, then you're doing something good.
Okay. Yep. That's a good answer. Um, So, how at being in the position that you're in, how do you meet the needs of the students? How do you meet the needs of your teachers and then also your parents?
Forming relationships with them, talking to them, finding out what's happening in each of those areas. So I I have two kids myself, and two boys, Tyler and Tristan, and they both are young musicians themselves. And so I thought, being a teacher, um, and being a even being a parent, but not having at the time, kids that were in the music program, I was like, all right,
Hmm.
I know what it's like, but I didn't. And so now I have a unique position of being an administrator and a parent and a musician. So I kind of get to see all sides of what that's like, and talking to my own kids, but also talking to other kids, other, students that you meet in the classroom when you go and visit, teachers, or when we have some of our different programs that we run, and just talking to them and listening to them, and seeing what makes it tick for them. Like, why are they here? Why are they doing this?
Hmm.
What are they trying to get out of it? Um, and listening to the teachers is part of the problems. Like, when you hear problems from teachers, but you start figuring out there's a trend, of the same issue happening more and more. It's like, all right, well, this is something we need to fix, because it's not just affecting one person, it's affecting so many. So how can we solve this, or try to make this better for a group of people?
Hmm.
Um, and then also, as a parent, throughout the years, as my kids have gone through, school, and grown, and I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, parents around me eventually find out what I do, as a profession, as a job. And so when they do, then they start talking to you more and more about different things. And so you kind of
Okay.
listen, and sometimes it's just they don't understand, or they don't have all the information as to why certain things happen, a certain way. So, I love
Hmm.
being able to explain things in detail to them. But you also get, other perspectives on things too. And it's like, oh, you know what, that's a good idea, or that's a good point. Didn't think about
Hmm.
that. So, how can we make that work? It might work in this school, but how can we make that work in all the schools, or more schools? And so it's just, I've always been a person, I feel it's important to form relationships, um, because not only is it just a good thing to do, because if you form good relationships, you can people start to trust you, and they start to really tell you things that are on their mind.
Right.
And that's how you kind of learn what are the real true situations. And you don't want somebody just kind of giving you the surface level of things, just because, oh, that's my boss, I don't want to say too much, because whatever. But
Right.
if
Right.
people trust you and believe that you'll support them, and you got their back, they'll tell you what's really going on. And that's what I want.
Hmm.
I really want to know what's going on. Not that I can, again, solve all the problems, but hey, if there's something that I learned more about, that I can do something about to make it better, then why not? So
Hmm. Do you collaborate or talk to other supervisors from other school districts? Do you have time?
all the
Because
time.
okay.
Yep, yep. I mean, we have meetings. We are together, in a couple different ways through different organizations,
Hmm.
and sometimes we just get together just to talk and see what's happening in the other person's school system or district, and collaborate to figure out, hey, what do you do about this? Just like, teachers do. Like, if you think about how, if you work at a certain school and you talk to another middle school teacher, and to kind of find out, what are they doing about the situation. Same thing happens on our level too. you know
Okay.
um, there's a group of us that, that talk all the time, and just kind of bounce ideas off each other. Or if you have a question, it's like, hey, I'm dealing with this in my school system, and I figured, like, you might have had this problem before. How did you handle it? So yeah, there are conversations like that all the time that happen. Yeah.
Okay. Um, when it comes to hiring teachers, how what is that process like for you? Something is that something that is amusing? Because sometimes, or or you're just kind of like, whoa, that's this person's not going to work. How is that?
It can be amusing sometimes, but no,
Okay.
it's again, it's learned. I've learned. Um, you learn how to read people in a sense, and kind of get an idea of um, who they are. Or you try to learn and get ideas of who people that you are starting to meet as far as wanting to become prospective teachers.
Mhm.
Um, who they are, what are their ideas and goals and visions? Um, where do you see them in your own district? Um,
Mhm.
how can you help them become successful? What is it that they want to do, and and where is the best fit for what they want and what we need, and how can we kind of find that middle ground to put them in the right position. um, and it's hard sometimes because we're lucky in the sense that we get to have conversations with for the most part people that come into our school system. We try, like, I want to interview anyone that's interested in teaching band or orchestra. I want to meet you. Like, I want to know who you are
Mhm.
um, before you get into the school system, because there's a lot that I need to know about you, and that I can also inform you on and tell you about, that you might not get from you know um, a principal or an HR recruiter or whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody brings something to the table. The principal can definitely talk about the environment and culture of their school. HR can talk about, you know, what's happening in the school system, salaries and benefits and things like that. But I'm the one that's going to tell you what's going to happen with what you want to teach.
Okay.
If you're coming in being a band or orchestra teacher, I'm the one you want to talk to be quite
Right.
honest. Just like I want to talk to you to find out who you are and what your goals are, what you want to do. And
Right.
that doesn't always happen. And sometimes we there are negative things that happen because of that. But as much as we can, we want to meet these new people out here, new teachers, or even teachers that are transferring from a different district, and get to know you so we can make it work. Because uh, I want you to be happy with where you are working and teaching, just like
Mhm.
I was, because I know it makes a difference. Like, if you're happy
Mhm.
with what you're doing, hey, then you're gonna have fun, and you're gonna have a great program, and you're gonna stay, and you're gonna enjoy what you're doing, and you're gonna make a career out of it, and that's what we want.
Right. Okay. Has the teacher shortage has had an effect on the hiring process as far as filling positions in the schools? How bad is it? Is it not that bad, or have you been able to work your music supervisor magic and make things happen?
It definitely has had an impact. I saw this coming years ago, and
Mm.
we all did. Um, but it's gotten to the point
Is this
now where
pre-pandemic you saw this
it's
coming, or because of
yes,
the pandemic?
pre-pandemic,
Oh, okay.
pandemic, because it's you look at um, the number of candidates that apply, and then you look at the quality of candidates that apply. Um, there are different trends that kind of happen that kind of paint a picture for you.
Okay.
And this is not just in music. This is just in education in general. And
Okay.
but when you have a specialty like music, where there's not a ton of people in to begin with, because you're specializing in something in particular, and so there was always kind of a small pool in a sense, but that pool has grown so much smaller now,
Okay.
post pandemic. And and with education right now is we're we're going through this new huge transition. We got to figure out what to do and how to make it better for everyone, especially classroom teachers, because um, there's not a lot of people coming out in from colleges and universities wanting to be in education, in public school education,
Right.
wanting to teach. And so that means, on top of that, then that means there's not a lot of specialty teachers who want to come out and be a music educator.
Right.
Um, so that makes it very difficult to find, candidates for your positions. And so and we're seeing that right now. And all of us, like all across the state, and talking to other colleagues, everybody's hurting, everybody's feeling it. It's definitely been an impact on keeping positions filled and
Hmm.
finding people for upcoming positions when you have people going to retire or that are moving on to different things. So
Right.
it's hard. And I would say yes, I've been able to use my supervisor magic for a while, but my wand is pretty much empty
Tap out.
now. It's tapped out. It's definitely tapped out. And we're all, all of us as music supervisors are all trying to figure out where's the new wand store so we can get that new magic wand to make it work again. Because
Right.
we're all it's tough for all of us right now. So
How easy or difficult is it for you to convince the higher ups what you do, what we do as music teachers is important, as far as like, you know, um, there needs to be continuous music programs in certain schools or in all the schools. Um, is it easy, or how difficult is it for you to get to funds to help, whether it be from the government, locally, outside people? Um, what is that like? Because I'm sure that probably is frustrating. Possibly, I don't want to make any assumptions, but whenever schools want to chop something, it's always like, well, let's get rid of the creative arts classes first. So yeah, talk about that.
so it is challenging. It is frustrating. It takes patience. It takes perseverance. It takes grit. It takes you got to be aggressive sometimes. You have to know how to play the game. It's political
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. It's a lot involved. Um, I learned, and I have learned over the years, like anything you do, you have to justify it. You have to have a reason why you're asking for something. And so, every year when it's time for budget season, I would write a justification for why I'm asking for more money, why we need this. And, I would write it in that, after, a couple edits or whatever, I was like, that's pretty good. Like, there's no way they would say no. No. So I'm like, what?
Ooh,
Like, I don't understand. Like, did you read what I wrote?
right.
And then, as you talk to more people and you understand, it's like, and sometimes when they say no, it's not because they don't understand or they don't believe what you're saying or they don't want to help. It's just they can't because there might be something else that, needs that same pot of money as well. And so, they have to choose. Everybody has to make decisions. And sometimes it's hard, it's tough. So, I've learned over the years, I would say like my justifications have changed more from like sad sob stories to data stories
Hmm.
because that's what you have to learn who your audience is and who is reading this and what their roles are in positions. And so I've changed my justifications into sad data stories with more supportive data on why I'm asking for the things that we need. And
Okay.
so, and it's like sometimes like you spend a lot of time, you know, uh, getting into the data and painting more of a vivid picture. Because you would think like what you wrote before initially or originally was enough, but it's like, all
Hmm.
right, well, that didn't get it. All right, so how can I make this, be more impactful than what I just wrote? So how can I
Hmm.
really paint this picture for you to understand? I'm not just asking for this just because I want more money. Like we need this. We have to have this. this, and again, like I said, everything that I do is about the students and it's for the students. And so
Hmm.
I started using that um, to paint a better picture, I hope, to show why, you know, this is why I've chosen this particular aspect as my focus. And so,
Hmm.
and it's paid off in some ways. You never get everything that you want, but if you can get more than what you had, then I consider that a win. And so, and you just keep plugging along that way. And sometimes it takes way longer than you want it to or you think it should. But if you have that perseverance and that patience and you just keep trying, that's the thing, you won't know until you try. So you've
Hmm.
always got to keep trying and keep pushing. And, if they say no, all right, well, how can I, get it next year? Or how can I get, half of it or a quarter of it? Or, what can I do? Like, you just got to figure out and kind of talk to people and understand, the nature of the game. It's like I said, sometimes it's political, sometimes, um, sometimes it's a tough decision, that just didn't work out in your favor that year. But, you just got to keep trying. So it's definitely frustrating because, you in your own mind, like we all have this idea of how things should work. And
Right.
until you actually are in that seat or in those shoes, you might not know all of the details as to why it doesn't work the way you think it should.
Hmm.
Um, but even still, there's still sometimes where it's just like, all right, I know it should work this way, or it does work this way, and and why didn't we win it or whatever? Why didn't we get whatever we asked for? And it's frustrating because who's suffering, who's not getting the things they need, and it's the students. And so
Right.
that's when sometimes that gives you more of a drive to work even harder because it's like, all right, I can't let them suffer more or not have XYZ thing another
Hmm.
year. And
Hmm.
you dig down harder to try to get it. And other times, it kind of like punches you in your gut a little bit where it's just like, man, like I just knew that I was going to get this, or, why aren't they seeing this? Or why aren't they understanding, this is what we need. But again, you just got to pick yourself up, dust your shoulders off and go at it again and just keep working. So
Okay. All right, couple more questions before we get to the fun stuff. So what would you say is the best thing about your job and doing what you do?
the best thing about my job is that uh, it has something to do with giving kids an opportunity to explore a passion they may have, or even just try it out and see if it's something that they are interested in or have a talent with, or just, want to try for a hot second. Um, and with that being in music, I think about again my time in the school system and how much fun I had, in music and how it was important to me and how it is me. That's a music is my life
Mhm,
in a sense. I
mhm,
mean, I have other things that I love to do and get involved with outside of music. It's not, I'm not 100% all music, but it is a huge part of my life. And if I can help others experience that and enjoy that, because, and if you talk to students and teachers, as to what is their why, like, why are they here? Why are they doing this? You'll hear some amazing things, and I do
mhm,
that today still, when I meet new kids, it's like, you see their excitement when they found out they made it into, whatever honor group, or, they got a one on their solo at solo ensemble, or, they got a one at assessment festival, or they played something, that was difficult and, they didn't think they could do. I've seen that happen in my own house with my own child, where it's like, I'll put something in front of him or his teacher will give him something. And he's like, I can't play that. Both of them will say that. I'm like, yes, you can. Like, you just got to
right,
work at it. And
right.
when they put that effort behind it and it's like they accomplished what they've done, and it's like, and they realize, oh, I
Yeah,
did it. Like
yep,
those
yep,
those moments right there. Yep. I mean, it's something where I feel like it's different in music where, you know, we all know that you use a different side of your brain in music and in the arts. Um, it's just you see like the relationships that are formed with students when they're working together. You see, the perseverance that they may have with working on something. You see the fun that they have. Um, with the relationships that they formed or
Hmm.
the fun that they've had because you know they took on a challenge and they were able to take it on and do well with it and persevere with it, or
Hmm.
you see the kids that have this raw talent and you're curious to know like where are they going to go with this, how far can they go, what are they going to do with it next, what's going to happen. There's so many different things, and it's all right. It's physical too. That's another thing too. Like, and everything is kind of immediate in music, where like when you play a wrong note, for the most part, you know it like right then and there. It's not
Right.
like you have to wait for somebody to grade something and give it back to you a week later and say, "Oh yeah, you missed this math problem because you didn't follow the steps correctly." Like it's
Hmm.
a process that has immediate results, and there's not too many things that happen in someone's life that's so immediate like that.
Hmm.
um and so I think that's why music is so important, because it teaches students to learn how to deal with something in the moment, like immediately. And it's not always good. Like sometimes, like if you don't do well, it's like you have to figure out, well, all right, well, how do I attack it next time? How do I do better with it if it happens again? And these are these life skills that, you take and learn and turn it into other, use it for other things. And I think that, we're one of the rare forms of art forms, or even just educational forms that's able to do that. And so I enjoy giving that experience to others and seeing, where they're going to take it, because everybody's road is different. Everybody's path is different. And it's
Hmm.
it's so cool to see, where they end up.
That was a fantastic answer, and you already answered the last question I was going to I was going to ask. So you wrapped that up. That was great. Um, any future projects personally for yourself besides sleep and a
So
vacation?
I love playing. That's always been in me, as far as, performing, and when I say performing, it could be just for me by myself in my basement. Like I don't have to perform for an audience, even though I enjoy that
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
Um, you were making me think about when I was teaching. At some point, when I first started teaching, I was playing in 7 different groups, and that was one of the reasons why I love teaching elementary, because it gave me the ability to do that, because I didn't have to worry about like after school marching band or after school anything. I could go and gig and play in all these different groups. And then when I, got married and had a family, I had to kind of cut some of that back. But with my wife being a musician too, or
Hmm.
my wife is a physical therapist, but she also, played in music, she understood. And so I was still able to kind of keep some of that stuff going. So um, that's, there have been points in my life, especially after COVID, where I kind of put playing on the back burner, because there was something else important that I had to deal with. With
Yep.
COVID, there was a lot we were all dealing with. Just trying to make it day to day. That
Yep.
was a lot right there, and there was no
Yep.
place to go out to perform anyway, because everybody was in the house.
Right.
But now that we're beyond that and past that, I'm getting excited about playing even more than what I was. I want to get back to where I was before, when I was playing with all these different groups, because I really enjoy playing.
Can you name
That's
some of these? I know you can, but name some of the groups that you have and people you've played for.
so I got lucky growing up, in college, with who I was around. So
Hmm.
my first real like big gig was at Constitution Hall in Washington D.C. I played with the Dells.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I played with the
Okay.
Temptations. I played with Peaches and Herb, Mickey Howard. Uh,
Ooh,
Gene
all the old
Chandler.
school people. That's good. The people that could actually
I
sing.
was so yep, exactly. People that actually sang and people that actually had live musicians,
Yep.
especially live horn sections, things
Yep.
like that. So, yeah, Jerry Butler, who else?
Did you play
I
for
was
the
playing with the
OJs?
OJs
I,
yeah,
yep.
that's a funny story too with the OJs. So, one year it was like one winter, it was like January, I think it was. I got a phone call from Gilbert Priors, the trumpet player, great trumpet player. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting at home." He goes, um, "You want a gig?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. I always want to play." He said,
Hmm.
"How fast can you get down to Constitution Hall?" I was like, "I don't know why." He said, "We need you now." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The trombone player didn't show up for the OJ's gig. Can you get down here within the next hour?" I was like, "I'll try." So had never played with the OJs. Jumped in the car, got there in 35 minutes. Don't ask me how fast I was driving. Got down there. I literally walked into the backstage door, took my coat off, and had to walk on stage and play the book. Um, Literally, when I walked in the building, they were walking on stage. So I had just enough time to take my coat off. I walked on stage, had never seen the book, and was scared out of my life because you're playing for thousands of people, and it's like,
Right.
and this group, the band, they had all played together, for years.
Yep.
But I told
Yep.
myself, I said, "Hey, I'm here. You know what? Do the best you can because hey, what else can happen? Like
Right. Right.
just go
Right.
and have fun."
Right.
And so I did it, and then I ended up playing with them for years. So it was a great experience, and I've had many experiences like that. Big and small, but they all mean the same to me. Like I've played for thousands of people. Playing at football games. We've done. I've played the national anthem as like a septet with trombones. We played for over 70,000 people, and but I have just as much fun playing for 50 people or 2 people. So, um, but yeah, I've played for a lot of people over the years, and that could be a whole other podcast story with that. But
Well, I'll have you back
it's
on at a
yeah.
later date. So that's good. Um, what other? So you did say, I think you said a fighter pilot. So what other job did you ever see yourself doing, like besides a music teacher, or we're just dreaming?
Yeah. So I guess the job that I almost went for, besides being a teacher, was a military musician.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I did, being at Northwestern High School, we were close to a whole bunch of recruiters. So there were always recruiters in our building, talking to kids. And I remember, you know, I would have spies looking out for, because I got tired of talking to some of them after a
Hmm.
while. Um, but my dad was in the military, and again with him working in Arlington and being around, Fort Myers, I was around the military a lot, so I learned to appreciate um, what they were able to do and their level of performance and abilities, and so that's something that I wanted to do. So that was I almost decided to do that, and if I had, I would have been done. I could have been retired by now had I
Right.
had I done that. Um, but that was one. But as far as the military, I would either have been a military musician or been a fighter pilot because I love fighter jets. And it's funny because my youngest, wants to be a pilot and can tell you just anything you want to know about planes. You can
Okay.
point at a plane in the sky. What's that? And he'll tell you the model number or whatever.
Okay.
But also, I've also wanted to be a police officer. That was something that I seriously considered. And sometimes, I still consider now, even though I know I'm getting up there in age, but it's just like I guess it's about what's in me as far as my personality and wanting to help people. So
Hmm.
I know it's a dangerous job, and I respect what they do. And but that's something else I've considered. Um, I love driving too. So I mean, who knows? I mean, there are a lot of different things that I still might get involved in. Every summer I would try to do something, out of the ordinary or different, just to kind of challenge myself or whatever. And so
Hmm.
I need to get back to doing that as well. So
Okay. Um, and then lastly, any book, music, or TV show that you enjoy watching to help you decompress, not think about the world?
so um, I'll watch anything on TV. I probably watch more TV than I listen to music. And I listen to a lot of music too. Sometimes, I'll get on iTunes and, it might be 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock and I go to bed and I'll just fall down this rabbit hole of music and it'll be
Hmm.
3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I still haven't gone to sleep yet because I'm just listening to music. But so someone actually recommended a book. I haven't even started it yet because I just got it, but it's called The Original Black Elite by Daniel Murray, and it's the story of the forgotten era. So it's a
Okay.
really good book that I'm really interested in reading. So I'm going to check that out. And I
Okay.
also got another book called the Steel Band Movement: The Forging of a National Art in Trinidad and Tobago. So and that's by uh, Stuwimple. Sorry if I mispronounced that name. But so
Okay.
I'm trying to get back into reading a little bit more, and
Hmm.
so these are my two books that I'm going to start maybe over winter break, just kind
Okay.
of getting into. But yeah, but as far as like just kind of chill and doing out anything outside of work, it's watching TV, playing with my boys, and I'm into model trains too. I have been huge into model trains for a long time, so I got that going
Yeah,
too.
I love, oh my gosh, I've loved model trains ever since I was a kid. That was, if I could buy just a house just for a model train, like different scenes and all types of stuff going on, I would, yeah, I would be in heaven. I'd love that.
Sounds like you're gonna have to come over because I've got a lot of I started collecting when I was like 6 or 7 years old. My dad came
Okay.
home one day with a 4x4 piece of wood, and I had my first little circle layout, and ever since then, I've been in it. So I've got over $10,000 in model train.
All right now. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop over and enjoy and have my moments, my childhood moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful, very educational, informative podcast. I want to thank Lionel Harrell, again, the supervisor, the instrumental music supervisor for Prince George's County in Maryland, for just having a great conversation with me tonight. So thank you very much. I know that you have a lot of things to do, and I know that you value your time, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on my podcast. So
Well, thanks for having me as a guest, and I truly appreciate it. And it means a lot for you to ask me, and I hope I was able to, paint a story as to not only why I do what I do, but why music is important for for all of us out there. So again, I really appreciate you inviting me to do this.
definitely, definitely. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Take care.